All right, this next one, we really got to talk about this. Cam Newton regains late round QB appeal with vastly improved weapons cabinet if he's the guy. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you that the weapons cabinet has improved. But I just want to I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to think about the football you saw Cam Newton play last year. And I'm a guy who was actually, I've been a lifelong Patriots hater. I found myself pulling for this guy. And it was one of the worst displays of quarterbacking I've ever seen in my life. I mean, the guy couldn't complete just like simple 10-yard passes to guys that were open right in front of him. It was, I mean, can you recall someone that you've seen play worse quarterback than that?
Nope.
I'm sure it's happened, but I mean, off the top of my head, I'm like, yeah, that's about as bad as I've ever seen someone play quarterback. So I think you'd have to have a weapons cabinet that included like one of those vibranium arms that the Winter Soldier wears in the Marvel movies, because Newton's arm's completely shot, or his shoulder, same thing. I reject your late round quarterback appeal on Newton. No chance, unless he's just a completely different guy than I saw play quarterback last year. Sell me on this. Tell me I'm wrong.
So the one thing you're wrong about here isn't that he sucked as a passer. Among the worst passing performances, as you said, we've probably ever witnessed. It was horrendous. And I can't sit here and say I'm confident that he's going to suddenly magically improve because he gets a full off season as a passer. He's never been a great passer, and that was some of the worst throwing we've ever seen in our lives. And I will also preface that I wouldn't be shocked if the Pats go at a high-end rookie at pick 15 or trade up and get somebody, and that we might be talking about a different starter in a couple months here. But the thing that I like about for fantasy, we're talking fantasy, not real life. As a Patriots fan, I'm not sitting here excited that Cam Newton's my quarterback. I don't like that at all. It's not exciting. But for fantasy purposes, I like that I saw 137 rush attempts, the second most of his career, despite him missing multiple games. 12 rushing touchdowns, the second most of his career, despite missing multiple games. I do think there is some legitimacy to the fact that he was the quarterback 3 in fantasy football, got COVID, and it just never really, he was, even as a passer, was getting it done. We saw him for almost 400 yards against Seattle in week 2. And then, we did see players bounce back from COVID. But there is something about that momentum they were building. They had offense, and they really only had a few months to gel. And then suddenly he's removed for 3 weeks, and he just never seemed to get his footing again. So this was all happening as well with literally the worst weapons cabinet you could possibly ask for. I don't know if you could name a worse weapons cabinet than what the Patriots rolled out last year. They go and add Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, probably the best tight end duo in the league now. And, Nelson Agholor, Kendrick Bourne, did we over splurge on them based on some of these wide receiver deals that have come out since then? Absolutely. It infuriates me. It's still also far better than anything we had at wide receiver last year when we were rolling it out. So you give this guy improved weapons. You give him a full offseason to learn it, full, obviously, recovery from the COVID and everything. And let's be real, this guy did have 40% of his games as a QB1, 20% as a QB2. Those 40% where he was not a QB1 or QB2 were bad, 5 points, ruin your week bad. So he got to the point where you probably weren't starting Cam Newton because of how.
No, you probably weren't starting him.
If you were,
listen, I hate it when you make sense, and I'm gonna have to die on this hill. But I will say this: I have seen across sports there does seem to be a lingering effect of COVID. From some of these guys. So it's hard for me to argue with that. I've seen it. I'm a big NBA fan, and I've definitely seen it with some NBA guys. They get it. They come back. They're able to play, but they're just not quite the same. I just feel like Newton's play was so bad. His throwing was so bad. It's like, man, that's got to be more than COVID.
Right. It is hard to ignore how bad that was, and he's always been a pretty bad thrower.
Yeah, but this was next level. I mean, you're right. He's never been an amazing passer, but this was non-NFL passing.
Yeah, it didn't belong on an NFL field. The Konami code upside is still real, though. The rushing upside, if he can even improve just mildly because he has somewhat decent weapons, then he could realistically be a QB1 more weeks than he isn't. I still don't know, though, if it's going to ever get away from the weeks that he doesn't score 2 rushing touchdowns. he might just be at like 5 fantasy points and just kill you. So it's not. I'd rather have, let's say, Ryan Fitzmagic. I'd probably rather have Daniel Jones, who we already talked about, than Cam Newton. But there is
Andy Dalton.
No, God, no. Fuck Andy Dalton. Come on. Now we're fuck that. Get out of here with that. But the rushing upside does keep him at least in your fantasy conversation, and the fact that you're going to get him in your last rounds is like, let's just see what happens here. Maybe just maybe he regains that stud that was again the QB3 in fantasy over those first 2 to 3 weeks before COVID hit. Maybe he can regain that form.
Maybe. All right, let's stick